Hey everybody. I just wanted to say a couple of things in this video about the student loan articles that I had given you. Um, I would say you should probably do that assignment first, that discussion that I have for this week, where it gives you two articles about student loans to read. So if you haven't done that yet, I would go do that now. Um, but I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that maybe don't come up too much in those essays that I think are important to consider if this is something you're interested in writing about, which is, of course, why we're looking at this topic, right? As related to our argument essay, where one of your topics, one of the suggested topics, is to try to solve a problem related to college. Obviously, student loans, big problem related to college, right? Um, so yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of things to what we see in those essays. First of all, I kind of presented it as like I was giving you one essay that's like for canceling debt or getting rid of tuition, and then one article that's like against it, right? And I did want to give you like both sides, and I do think that the anti article at least raises a few points that you would want to address if you were going to write about solving this problem of student loans and stuff. Um, but yeah, I think there's a lot of nuance within kind of the pro canceling student debt side that we have to kind of pull out. For instance, I don't think there's really like one coherent position on this necessarily. Or like if you want to say that we need to do something about student loans, you have to be very specific about what exactly you think we should do. Because even in the article I had for you to read, I think they mentioned at least three different positions or three different possible solutions to this problem. So the first one is probably the one they talk about the most. It's kind of the bill that Bernie Sanders put out, which would go with canceling all student debt and making all public colleges tuition free. So this is kind of the full approach, right? No debt, no college. No debt, no tuition. Sorry. Yes, college. No tuition. Um, a second possible solution they talk about in this is canceling $50,000 of debt for people making under $125,000, right? So this is not canceling all of the debt, only a certain amount, and only for people who make under a certain income level, right? And then the third one that I saw in there was just that community college should be free, you know. Um, so I just wanted to point that out that even if you think something needs to be done about student loans, you have to be very specific about what you think needs to be done. Do you agree with one of these plans? Do you agree with parts of one and parts of another one? Do you have a different solution maybe that doesn't fit exactly into these plans? Maybe you want to take parts of one and then add your own stuff. That's how specific you would want to be for this argument essay. Okay, and I also wanted to say something here about when we're making any argument, how we kind of need to get down to the fundamental questions of the argument, how we need to get down to kind of the basic terms of the argument if we're really going to understand like where these differences in opinion come from and like where like how people come to these different solutions. So like sticking with the student loan stuff, right? Let's take the two solutions that they mentioned of either the full approach of canceling all student debt and having no tuition going forward, and then this other approach of canceling $50,000 for only people making under 125,000. It might seem like there's not that much difference between these, either way, we're still getting rid of a lot of it, right? But I think each of them kind of come from a different premise, right? That's kind of a word that's related to arguments. Like when you talk about making arguments, you have a premise and you have a conclusion. Um, a premise is kind of like the basic principle that you're operating from, and the conclusion is like where that leads you. So, for instance, with the approach that there should be no tuition, that we should have no student debt, we should get rid of all of it, cancel it. The underlying philosophical premise there, or assumption, I guess, is that college is something that everyone should be able to have. That if you're a human, you get access to college, right? You get the ability. You can go to college. If in this case, if we're talking about America, right? If you live in America, you deserve to go to college, regardless of money or anything like that, right? That everyone should be able to do it. It's a right in that way. So from that point of view, everyone would just get it, regardless of rich or poor. So like the way that people criticize this sometimes is they'll say, and I think this shows up in the article a little bit, but they'll say, oh, well, you're trying to give free college to rich people, right? You want, uh, the children of Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos. I don't know if they have kids actually, but whatever, you get the point. You want the children of these people to be able to go to college for free. And the response would be, well, yeah, they're, humans, they're Americans, so yeah, they get to go for free, because fundamentally the belief is that everyone deserves to be able to go and not be charged, right? And then, you can have the questions about like, well, where does the money come from, right? 'Cause, oh, well, it's not really free, if you say that we're giving free college, someone has to pay for it. And I think in this article they mentioned the idea of like putting a tax on Wall Street to pay for it or whatever. And obviously there's many ways you could do that, Like the kind of fundamental question when it comes to like who's paying for college, right? It's like, okay, it costs a certain amount to have teachers and deans and secretaries and administrators to have all that stuff and to have a building, right? That costs a certain amount of money. So if the question is, where does that money come from? Right now, it comes from the students, right? Right now, we're saying, okay, if you're a student going to college, you're the one basically who's going to pay for all of this stuff, the building, the professor, the, people who answer the phone, the IT, all of that stuff. Right now, it's the students, and mostly students don't have that kind of money, right? Because they're young people, and oftentimes poor people, or people who have less money at least. So we say, oh, well, we'll just give you loans, right? So we'll pay for all the stuff, the professors and the whole school. We'll pay for all of that basically through credit that the government's going to give you, but ultimately the money is going to come out of the students, right? So kind of the way that this would change things of if we get rid of tuition, right? Obviously, it has to be paid for in some way. So it would just be, well, let's take the money from this place and do it. And in the article they happen to say, let's put a tax on trading stocks on Wall Street. We'll put a tax on that, and that's how we'll pay for it. So effectively, you take the who pays for it, and you take it from being the students to now these people on Wall Street, right? So that's one way this goes. But what I was trying to say about the fundamental thing of if you like the people who believe that tuition should be gotten rid of, that there should be no student debt, um, yeah, that everyone deserves it, right? That it's a basic thing you get just for being alive. The other approach of canceling 50,000 when it's under 125, like only for people who make under that amount of income, obviously they believe that some people should have to pay for college, right? Because they're saying only people under 125,000 should have their debt forgiven, you know? So they're not operating from the same premise. They're not operating from the same like underlying assumption. They're saying, oh, well, yeah, some people should have to pay, but just not like whatever, the people who have less money. Or and even with canceling 50,000, it's like, well, a lot of people have more than 50,000. So it's not that for that position, I don't think you could fundamentally believe that education is something that we deserve the way it is for high school, right? That's how it is for high school. If you're a person, if you're a certain age, you get to go to high school. So this other plan of only doing it for people making under 125,000, obviously it's a different like set of assumptions you're operating from. That yeah, we should cancel 50,000 because well yeah you should have to pay some of the debt, but it's just too much. It's a lot though, so it's kind of messed up. We don't want to do that to you. But you should still have to pay some of it. Like, for me, I have what 75,000 in loans, and that's nothing. I know people have 200,000, so those people would still be heavily in debt even if we canceled 50,000, right? So that's more looking at it as like, oh, we're basically, ruining these people's lives economically. So let's just ease off the pressure a little bit. So like, even though both of those positions are for, like, generally for canceling student debt there's a lot of important distinctions in between them. And if we get to the heart of the matter we can kind of see why we have these different approaches. And then something else I don't think they mentioned, but of course if you're saying that we're only going to help people making under a certain income, well then implied in that is that you're going to be asking people to prove what their income is in that way. And if you guys have done the FAFSA, you know how that works with all of the paperwork, page after page of filling in this information, having to get either pay stubs yourself or, with college, a lot of times they want like your parents' income information. And, I've known students who like just found it very difficult to fill out the FAFSA, or maybe students who English is not their first language find it almost impossible to fill out the FAFSA. And then I've had other students who just couldn't get the information that was asked for, and so people fall through the cracks, right? When you, it's the decision between doing it on a universal way where everyone gets it versus doing it in what they call a means tested, MEANS tested way, which is where we're doing it for only people in a certain income bracket, right? And when you do means testing, basically, you're accepting that a certain amount of people are going to fall through the cracks, right? Just because they're not going to fill out the paperwork on time or they're not going to have the documentation they need and stuff like that. So yeah, like I said, if you want to argue for solutions to student debt, you've got to make sure you know where you fall in among these different solutions, and that you see that there's multiple different solutions being offered here. And also, I want to make sure that we're getting to the fundamentals of why, like what are the basic principles that lead you to different conclusions. One thing on this kind of point, just about making arguments in general, it reminds me of like one of the most frustrating or annoying arguments that I think I've seen in a long time, especially like on the internet, which was like, is a hot dog a sandwich? Right? And I'm sure you guys have argued with this about this, or heard your friends talk about this. And I was always annoyed by this because the whole thing of like, oh, a taco a sandwich? Yes, it is. No, it's not. Is a wrap a sandwich? Is a gyro a sandwich? And like all this like talking, it's just like talking past each other, right? Because no one's getting to the fundamental thing. Because the fundamental question in that silly argument is, what is a sandwich, right? And your answer to the question, what is a sandwich, is going to determine, your opinion on everything else. Because some people will say, well, I think a sandwich, has to have two pieces of bread on both sides, or else it's not a sandwich. And other people will say, well, no, as long as it's, stuff surrounded by bread-ish material, then it's a sandwich. And then that's the whole thing, right? So either you think it needs to be two pieces of bread, or you don't. And then that determines whether or not you think a hot dog or a wrap or a taco or any of these other things are sandwiches, right? So that's what I mean, just about getting to like the core fundamental principles of an argument. And I hope that you can do that for any argument that you're making. You kind of have to see it that way. Like, what's the foundation of stuff that the argument is built on? One other thing that I wanted to mention here. So one argument they make in the anti-canceling student loan, the anti side, the essay, they mention the idea that like canceling student debt for people who currently have it would be unfair to people who already paid their debt off, right? And I don't know. I used to be like really dismissive of this argument and just view it as like sour grapes or something, like oh I had to do something, go through something bad, so everyone else should also have to go through something bad. And I think that that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? It's like not that I necessarily agree with this, but I think I saw it on Twitter or something recently where it was like talking about this idea of like, well, I had to pay my loans back. Someone being like, people shouldn't be able to get the COVID vaccine, because some people died of COVID and that wouldn't be fair to them. And there is like a similar logic there, but I don't know. The more I've thought about it, I think I've found that there's like something to this argument of like it's unfair to people who already paid it back. Because again, this goes back to what I was saying before. If the fundamental belief is that college is something that people deserve just by virtue of being a human and living here, um, then yeah, it kind of was wrong that those people had to pay for college, right? And that they paid their loans back. But like I don't know, to me, like I'd be fine with including that in an idea of fixing this. Like, okay, fine, let's reimburse them too. Like I'm fine with that personally, but I don't know. So I don't know, but I just used to think that argument was kind of silly. But then I don't know, maybe there is something to it. And again, my opinion on any of this stuff doesn't matter. I like to try to be open with students about what I think about this stuff. And then of course you can disagree and tell me that I'm wrong. I would love to read an essay about how I'm wrong about stuff. But I like to I think anyone who tries to say that they're totally neutral is lying anyway, and their bias will probably seep in. So I just like to be upfront about it. But yeah, I just wanted to point out those couple of things. Um, yeah, about the kind of argument about forgiving student loans. So I just want to emphasize that for whatever you're going to write about in this essay, make sure that you're extremely specific about the solution that you're arguing for whatever problem that it is. The more specific you are, the easier it's going to be able to get as many pages as you need, and the more evidence you're going to be able to find, and everything like that. So when you do research, if you find people, if you find like other people offering solutions, it's okay to disagree with them. It's okay to say, okay, here's, some people think that only community college should be free, but I don't think that goes far enough. I think it all needs to be free, whatever. The point is that's just kind of like how you want to use research, and then use that to help you make your argument as specific as you can. All right, that's all for now.